All right, class. So I thought I'd give this a shot, recording one of my lectures for those kids that are going to be absent on this day, or if you paid attention in class, but you need to go back and get some of these concepts and all of that. So we'll try to do this for most of the lectures we have from PowerPoints. This is a really important one. You need to do a spiral, a notebook, whatever you have, handwrite your notes. That's how we're going to recall a whole lot better. And I want you to title a new page, put today's date on it, the date of the class, 8/27 is the day that we covered this. And then you can title it what the title of this PowerPoint is, which is a big old overview of government. So this is a super important day because I'm going to give you a big old overview of government for you to understand the basics, okay? And then from this knowledge you gain, it's basically going to help you throughout all the class. We're not grading notes, okay? But you're going to have quizzes, you're going to have tests over this type of stuff, so it's key that you understand these concepts, okay? Pause if you need to. Write down examples. Don't just mindlessly copy the things you see on the slide. That's not enough learning. I'm doing this lecture for a reason, okay? So you can get examples, real-world examples that I talk about, stuff like that, and add all that kind of detail to your notes. All right, so first slide here is a little warm-up. Why do you think we need government? I'm sure that we do this in the class and you guys already understand this, okay? So I'm going to go through some slides that will give you some of those, but take a moment and think, why do we need government? Okay. So here we've got, again, this is the title, big old government, okay. This is old PowerPoints. I hadn't taught this class in a while. All right, what is government? Well, basically, government is going to be the ruling authority, capital not needed, the ruling authority for a community. And remember, authority, I mean, the short answer here I'm going to add to my slides is power, basically. So any ruling authority for a community. We have mayors, we have governors, we have city councils, at the top level, we have presidents, we have Congress, all of that. All of these people have authority. Don't forget your courts, all of that type of stuff too. So basically, all of these things can be considered government. Why do communities need government? Again, I feel like you probably know the answer to this already, but my short answer is to make it possible for people to live together peacefully, right? We don't want any of those anarchists, those people that think, we don't need government, we'd be fine. Not true. We all need government. It makes it possible for us to live together peacefully, and a lot of benefits come from this. As a wise old man said, life without government would be nasty, brutish, and short. Do you guys know who said that? This is one of our Enlightenment thinkers. Thinking about it? Thomas Hobbes. Does this sound familiar from your American 1 class? Thomas Hobbes had basically said this about government, and there's a really awful little cartoon there you can look at to see. What do governments do? All right, here's your list. Good note-taking. You want a bullet point, you want to add detail. So what do governments do? In the basic sense, they provide laws, okay? And I've got a picture here, President Johnson signing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. You should remember this from American 2, no doubt. And I'm going to change the font color here as I'm editing on the fly. Signing the Civil Rights Act. This was, of course, a very famous law, but in short, you know, this is what governments are doing here. So, all right, I had to take a minute there to figure out my font color. So anyways, providing laws. By the way, there are things that are laws that aren't just laws like you would think of, like you can do this, you can't do that. Paying taxes, that's a law. Anytime we have a change in tax code, we're basically changing the laws that tell us what we have to pay. So if the sales tax in North Carolina goes up to 8%, you know, that's a law that somebody passed. Pro tip, anytime you see, like you see here under the picture of President Johnson, capital A, anything that ends in ACT is an act, that is a law, usually passed by Congress. We're going to get into all the details of how laws are made, but of course, this is a big old overview. That's all this is. So that's one thing we do. Also, enforce laws, okay? This is going to be our executive branch, which we'll talk about. But the enforcement of laws, you see some pictures here. U.S. Food and Drug Administration, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. These are basically, in this case, some of these are executive branch bureaucracies, and their job is they have laws that they enforce. I'm sure you know the FDA. When we have food recalls or things like that, things the FDA said. The FDA right now is looking at approvals for vaccines for COVID and all that kind of stuff. Other ones you've gotten here, examples. Again, you're always writing down examples. Department of Homeland Security, they enforce laws like if you ever have flown and you have to take off your shoes before you go through, stuff like that, you know, all of this. The CIA, the Environmental Protection Agency, all these clean air or clean water things. These are all laws that are enforced by various government agencies. Who passes these laws? In some cases, these government agencies have the ability to do that themselves. But for the most part, you're going to see our legislative branch, Congress, is the one that actually writes the laws. The president approves them, so on and so forth. Those are the details. We're not worried about that yet. It's a big old overview. All right, providing security. Just some photos here. You know, we typically are going to think of military. We're going to think of police. I've got the Department of Defense down there. That's the big Pentagon building. People work there. It doesn't always have to be guys with guns that provide security, but this is what we think of most of the time. Another thing that our governments are going to do, establish justice. And you have some pictures here. You've got court proceedings. You got the judge. I suppose you could even say people being put in jail for things. All of this justice is, you know, is given out. So that's another function of the government. Mostly, what branch of government? The judicial branch. Provides services. Here you can see anything from mail. That's a service our federal government provides. We've got a library there in the top corner. We got parks. We got roads. We got trash pickup. We have schools. Schools are the thing that provides the service of free education for everyone. So you've got that. Another role that the government does is help guide the community. And this was a word, I think we had this in chapter 1 when you did your textbook work. Help shape public policy. Public policy is basically the course of action to achieve community goals. I'm going to shrink this down here a little bit. But yeah, guiding the community. So what do we want for our community? Oh, this awfulness in the news. Again, we've got an unfortunate incident where police shot at an unarmed man. This one is in Kenosha, Wisconsin, I think is where this happened. I have read that police department, they did not have a public policy for their police officers to wear body cameras. And that's something now, probably a direct result of this shooting, that they're going to make sure that all the cops now have body cameras there. So public policy has changed, all right? The course of action to achieve community goals. In this case, they've had this awful incident, which is shining a spotlight on problems in their police department. The public policy is going to change. All right, representative government. We got a little drawing there. I didn't do that, the drawing. Representative government, you'll see this a lot. This is pretty much what America is for the most part, is we don't get to go out and say, hey, I want this, I want this, I want that. Although there are mechanisms for that to happen. But in general, when we have elections, we are electing people to represent us. This could be a senator, somebody, a congressperson that works in the House of Representatives. This could be a mayor. This could be the superintendent of schools. There's all these positions, these public offices that people get elected to, and they represent us. You know, you hear this a lot about governments are, democracies are, the people have the power. You know, a lot of it is the people have the power, but the people that have the most power are the people that go vote for their representatives. So when you look at election day, the types of people that are going to go vote, those are the ones that are choosing who is going to represent them. There's a lot of groups, and we look at this later, demographics that don't vote in as large percentages as others. Well, their representation in the government, unfortunately, is lacking. So all of these are things we'll talk about later. All right. Now we've got the easy one, a big ol' overview. Don't hurt your little brain by trying to ask all the questions on this now. 3 branches of government we have in American democracy. I'm going to add that there. You probably remember these from your middle school. Legislative, executive, judicial. Are you writing them down? I hope so. In short, the legislative, you can see on this slide legislative branch at the federal level is made up of the Senate. It's made up of the House of Representatives. The executive branch at the federal level, made up of president, made up of vice president, cabinet, which we'll talk more about on another day. And then you have the judicial branch, which is your Supreme Court, the highest court, federal courts as well, underneath that, okay? All of these three branches of government, they have different powers, they have different roles, and the main thing that I know you remember this from your middle school is they check and balance each other. So if there's a law that gets written by our legislative branch, it has to be signed by the executive branch. If that law is found to be what we call unconstitutional, meaning it doesn't follow our Constitution, the document that is the basis for all our laws, then the judicial branch may decide that's not a valid law. And the judicial branch can then do what we call interpret the laws, and they can say, throw that law out, right? So we've seen that throughout history. You know that from all the history classes you've taken. You know, we had Jim Crow laws, and at one point in time, the courts said those are valid. But then at another point in time, the courts said they're not valid, right? So legislative makes the laws. Executive enforces the laws. How do they do that? How do presidents or cabinet officials or government agencies, they can enforce the laws in a variety of ways. Most of the time, if we don't follow the laws, we have some consequences to suffer. And then the judicial branch interprets the law. So big ol' overview, know that. And then all the details we'll get to later on. As far as our levels of the government, okay, we've got 3 levels. Don't confuse branches with levels. People do this all the time, okay? Branches, legislative, executive, judicial. Levels are going to be federal, which we see in the slide here. The government of the entire country, right? This is Washington, D.C. is where all of this is. So we've got some of the pictures here, by the way, the White House, the executive branch, the state capitol building, which hopefully you can see there. That is where our Congress is located. And then this other one is the Supreme Court of the United States. So all of this is at the federal level, entire country, okay? Second level is state governments. And this is our governor. Do you know who he is? You should. Roy Cooper. This building is what's called our General Assembly building. The General Assembly makes laws for the states. And then, state laws are different from federal laws, but a state law, for example, might be, the one you kids love. Is marijuana legal or not in this state? States get to decide that. Between the governor and the General Assemblies, they get to decide that for the state, which is why some states have legalized this, some states haven't. So there's a good example for you. And then local governments. Counties, also made up of what we call municipalities, which are cities and towns. So counties and then cities and towns. They're 2 different things, but they're all of that. Sometimes we say closest to the people, we call these local governments. Closest meaning, hey, the things that bother you most, the most relevant. They didn't come and pick up my trash. I've got a crack in the sidewalk somewhere. I got to figure out my kids are going to school or virtual learning. All of these things are relevant and close to us. And usually those are local governments that do that. The presidency and stuff has a lot that they don't deal with there. All right. So we're going to take a pause here. I'm going to have another video out for you about the principles of American democracy. But go back through this, review yourself. What are the 3 branches? What's the responsibility of those 3 branches? What are the 3 levels of government? Federal, state, local. Okay, make sure you know the difference between these. And then, of course, know a million examples of what governments do, which are back on some of those earlier slides. Okay? All right, so we're going to take a pause. We're going to stop this video because apparently education is not free when it comes to these products. And then you're gonna go find your other video, Principles of American Democracy. Alrighty. Bye. See you soon.